Our speaker today, the Reverend William Harper, joins us from Bainbridge Island, Washington, and Sun Valley, Idaho. Bill has been a pastor for the last 35 years, and for 30 of those years, he's figured out a way to get back here to Camp Dudley. Here at camp, you might find him working with the cabins and teams on the challenge course, belaying on the new climbing tower, running a senior night experience, or just hanging out on the high-cut porch, looking to help anybody that passes by, or to have a conversation about life. Bill keeps a handwritten note from the former director, Willie Schmidt, inviting him to his first Sunday chapel at Dudley, July 8th, 1990. I was lucky to meet Bill that year when I was a junior leader in Columbia Cabin, and I've treasured our relationship ever since, which has grown stronger and stronger each year. As an Episcopal minister, Bill served congregations in Larchmont, New York, and Chappaqua, New York, and then returned to his native Pacific Northwest, where he became the founding pastor of Grace Episcopal Church, and he helped to build that church to more than 400 families on Bainbridge Island. Bill also founded Pilgrim Trekking, leading high school students on backpacking trips through Idaho's Sawtooth Mountains and Washington's North Cascade Mountains. He based those programs on his adventures leading trips into the outdoors with high school students, many of those right here in the Adirondacks. Bill retired in 2015 and has since fulfilled a lifelong dream to become a professional skier. He spent his last several winters as a ski patrolman at Sun Valley, Idaho, and I'm told that last year he had 109 days on skis. He and his wife, Carolyn, also enjoy spending as much time as they can on their road bikes. And they have a long 100-mile gravel road race coming up in Idaho later this summer. For Bill, Dudley is a place where he can practice what he preaches. Bill has been a valued counselor to me in my work and a great asset to the Dudley community. He arrived on the very first day of the summer with the D-heads, and he has been enormously helpful every single minute that he has been here since then. And for this, all of us are grateful. Please join me in welcoming camper number 18500, our good friend, Bill Harper.
Matt, thank you again for trusting me. We've shared this spot together for many years, and I'm really grateful for that. And I tell you guys every year, you look beautiful, because you do. This morning I want to start by saying a really clear and direct thank you to our D-heads. I've been thinking about you guys a lot, because we arrived here the same day, weeks ago, nearly a month, it seems like. So D-heads, would you stand up for a minute? All right. For just a few days, camp was just you guys and a few others of us. It seemed like it was just our place. But in those preseason days, I could see this quiet and real confidence that you guys carried. I could also see the way Matt trusted you, the way he invited you guys to be partners and peers with him. The care you would show for each other in those days was really remarkable, just watching you move through campus. So you are in the right place for your lives right now. Now I'm going to ask all our leaders to stand as well. You guys, D-heads, keep standing. Let's get all the leaders standing up. The time and the work that you guys together have already put in to make this the best ever summer really does inspire me. You work so hard. And I can hear that in your voices already. A little hoarse, a little rusty. From your first year leaders to our D heads, the effort all of you have done so far is strong and sincere, and I can't offer you an extra day off. I can't offer you an extra night out, but I can offer you, just as our summer is starting, our gratitude. So campers, look up at your leader right now and put an expression of awe on your face. Yeah, exactly. And let's give these guys a round of applause to show them because we appreciate them. All right, thank you guys. Sit down and settle in. James Mayo was asked by a couple campers, how long would chapel be? Just as I was walking past, James said 45 minutes, and I said, James, that's how long I'm talking, so chapel's going to be longer than that. Yeah, is he joking or not? I don't know. All right, how many are here for your very first Sunday chapel? Nice. So I love Sundays at camp. I love the extra sleep. I love the longer choice time. I love Sunday lunch. I love the garbage bowl. Hymn sing, Sunday talks. And I love this particular moment too, and I hope that you will also. I think that this is, as Matt said, a time and a place where we can feel maybe a deeper spirit, a quieter spirit. And maybe this is a place, maybe, where we can be inspired or think a little bit more about the spirit of Dudley and about the spirit that's in each of us. And I'm hoping that I can help us sense that spirit today with two personal stories that I want to tell you. So in March of 2013, I was traveling through Vietnam with a group of people from my church. And we were there for several weeks, and we weren't there as tourists really, but as I guess what I would call pilgrims. We were there to learn and to share and to try to be useful. And we were traveling with an organization that I've now been involved with for more than 20 years, called Peace Trees Vietnam. And it was started by a woman who lost her son when his helicopter was shot down during the war. He was 19 years old when he died. He was, to his mother, still a child, her child. So many years later, she and her daughter, who would have been his sister, were deeply inspired to help repair the wounds of war by building relationships with veterans from both sides and with mothers who had also lost their children. They wanted somehow to make sense of the loss they had experienced and that so many other mothers and sisters had experienced. And they wanted, if possible, to find some meaning. So they began with this really simple idea of taking a group of American veterans of that particular war, to Vietnam, just to plant trees in the most devastated war zones, and to plant those trees alongside Vietnamese military veterans who would have been the targets of those helicopter gunships and the continuous bombing of war. And they wanted to try to do this really simple thing before any diplomatic relationships had been reestablished between the two countries. So it was a bold idea, the kind of idea that mothers and sisters would think of. Some thought it was foolish, some thought it was a good idea, just impossible. So they went, and they quickly learned that to plant those trees, they first had to clear the unexploded mines, the unexploded bombs, the unexploded cluster grenades that were everywhere in the central highlands of Vietnam, the region of the country that had been most fiercely fought over. So they set about figuring out how to do that. They raised money, got governments to give them permission, and they formed a demining team. Once a small chunk of land was finally cleared, they planted trees, and those veterans, doing that simple work side by side, discovered that wounds could be healed. And they also discovered that there was so much more work to do. That region was, in 1995, still so devastated and poor that families would clear and plow any land they could find just to survive. And then children would do what children do when things float to the surface in a field. Round metal balls, cluster bombs. Children would do what children would do, and much too often that simple game of soft toss would activate a long dormant detonation trigger and the new toy would take an arm, take a leg, take a life. So on that first trip, this mother and daughter team did clear some land, and they helped people who had been adversaries and enemies work side by side. Today, now, more than 2 decades later, Peace Trees Vietnam is the largest private aid organization working in Vietnam. They've cleared thousands of acres. They've taught farmers how to grow coffee and pepper and vanilla and other spices. They've managed to partner with Costco to bring that coffee and spice harvested from land that was once barren and tragic to markets all over the world. Most of all, Peace Trees realized that to help so many isolated and rural villages thrive, they should build small preschools for children whose lives were still affected by a long-ago war. And that's why we were there. That's why I was there with my little group. We were breaking ground on another one of those schools, and we came to the isolated village on roads that made no sense to travel by car. But in spite of rugged and rutted travel and stray cattle blocking roads, when we arrived there, there were dozens and dozens of people who'd come and walked miles just to greet us. And there were local children who knew that we were bringing food and toys. So for me, the heart of this moment, the heart of this story was that particular moment when I pulled out of my backpack 15 or so bottles of bubbles. I've played with bubbles here in the Dudley Chapel before, but playing with them was remarkable. Suddenly, all of these tiny, tiny children gathered around me. 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, no shoes, the thinnest clothes you can imagine, most of them wearing cast-off American t-shirts and nylon shorts. And I opened one of the bottles, and I crouched down in the miniature crowd, and I started to blow. And I started to blow. And I noticed the children stepping back. And I realized that they'd never seen that before. So there was this look of amazement on their faces, but also a little fear. Bubbles appeared like magic from the wand, as they always do, as I knew they would. There was this big, strange man in the middle of them who could make floaty things appear out of nothing. And they had no explanation for that. I kept dipping my wand in and blowing bubbles. And then they all rushed in, and they wanted to get closer. Bubbles bounced off faces and popped, spraying in the air. One more blow, and they wanted to catch them. And I kept saying the word bubbles. What else could I do? And they had no idea what I was talking about. They just kept looking at me, now with delight, but with no sense of how this could possibly be happening. So I dipped again, and I held the wand in front of this one little boy who was closest to me, right in front of his face, and as if he would know what to do, and I tried to go, he couldn't figure it out. So I blew again, and I blew again, tried to demonstrate, and finally I held it out, and this one little girl leans in from the back, and she blows, and bubbles go everywhere. She takes the bottle from me and the wand, and then they all did it, and pretty soon there's bubbles floating everywhere, and we played with bubbles until all the bubble juice was gone. Simple as that. So my second story is the exact same story, just different country, different language, and a different toy. The story unfolds in the same way because children are who they are and they do what they do. It was the year after going to Vietnam, and now I was with a group traveling in Ethiopia. And for me, it was my first trip to Africa, but I was traveling with 2 friends, a medical doctor and a public health worker who have lived and worked with the people of Ethiopia for more than 50 years. And our group was there to learn and support a small but remarkable program that they had started more than 20 years ago. Knowing as they did that most children in countrywide villages were growing up malnourished and stunted because of a terribly limited diet, my 2 friends just began traveling, meeting mothers in small villages and teaching them how to grow vegetables, teaching them how to grow small kitchen gardens with things like cucumbers, beets, leafy greens of any kind. And then my two friends were smart enough to watch and patiently wait and study what happened in 3 villages. 10 years later, the children in those villages are now 2 inches on average taller than children in other villages, and they meet all the World Health Organization's goals for normal child development. It was a remarkable program. It still is, and it's spreading throughout the country. So we were there on this trip to build more gardens. And while we were doing that, we visited local village markets, which were teeming with people and cows and chickens and dogs and cats everywhere, and children everywhere. Before my trip, and remembering my experience in Vietnam, I'd imagined scenes like this. I had imagined being in a market with children everywhere, and I'd wondered what I could bring this time, much like the bubbles. So this time my backpack was full of yo-yos. Why not? I thought it'd be fun and easy to teach and play and connect with kids, even if just for a moment. But standing that day in the midst of the market, I felt awkward. I felt awkward playing with my toys. I thought it would look weird for this very white, very grown-up, actually old man, to pull out toys and start giving them away. And adding to the sense of weird awkwardness, it seemed that the only place I could find where I could try to do a little yo-yo demonstration was right in front of a market stall where a man was butchering a cow. Really, just taking the cow apart. The cow was hanging in various parts and dogs were barking for scraps. The chickens were being chased, cats were prowling, people were shouting pounds and prices and trying to get a deal, and there was me with my yo-yos. I finally got over myself, and I pulled one out of my bag. Yeah, I'm watching that club. How does that happen? Oh, you know how much I practiced to get to this moment? And this is what I started doing. And children came. And I started handing them out. But again, the same problem. Language and experience. No one knew how to play with the yo-yo. But soon they were playing. Inventing tricks right there. One boy picked up a yellow one. He held the string, it dropped down and came back to him, and he couldn't believe his own eyes. Like I said, children do what they do. So these 2 experiences, these 2 stories have left a mark on me, and I come back to them over and over again. I've so often wondered what Jesus meant when he said that God's world belongs to children. And that unless we become like children, we will never see the world as God dreams it could be. The stories tell us that children were drawn to Jesus, and he to them. And when the grown-ups in the room tried to move the children away, Jesus instead brought the children closer. It's worth wondering why. Whatever we might believe about religion, the life and legacy of Jesus is rooted in forgiveness, acceptance, trust, change, and even revolution. And in a child, Jesus found his model of what it means to follow him. So I don't at all know what Jesus meant when he said we have to see the world through the eyes of a child. Apparently, he just never explained himself. He just kept repeating it. So we're left to wonder, and I like that. There is indeed something about being a child. When people say, grow up, my response is not so fast. Let's wait. And when we think that things will make more sense when we're grown up, think again. Ask my friend Mike Griffin about that. Frankly, life makes less sense to me now than it did when I was a kid. So this is it. This is what I want us to consider. Children know that the world is amazing. They know it's full of magic and things that they can't explain. They don't know how things work. They don't know how bubbles happen and spinners on strings can climb up and down. Children can live with magic and miracles. They get to make up elaborate stories and nonsensical explanations. Just ask every person who's ever been to Camp Dudley. But let's be honest, children also know that the world, while amazing, is huge and can be frightening. Children know what it means to be scared, what it means to be frightened. They know truths that most grown-ups try to deny. Children gush. They gush with joy. They just let it out. And they let their tears out, too. Children certainly know that they're not in control of much. They know that they are dependent and vulnerable, and sometimes all the wealth in the world can't buy them what they need. They know that sometimes good things happen for free, and that someone else pays and they don't know anything. Children also know that they have to wait, that they're not grown up. Somehow they know it's wrong to grow up too soon or to grow up too much. So I'm a grown-up, whatever that means. I've been married 40 years. I have 2 children. They are no longer children. I had a mortgage once. I paid it off. I pay taxes because I'm supposed to, and I know I owe others for their share of the work. I showed up for work for 30 years, mostly on time and sometimes overtime, and then I retired. And now I just try to be useful. And I guess all of that makes me a grown-up. But when someone subtly suggests to me, as they often do, that my desire to return to camp year after year might be a sign that I have not grown up completely, I agree. I haven't. And I smile. So I was never a cub. I can't go back in time and become one. I've never stood on the benches in Beckman feeling the crazy thrill of a cub cheer or a plebe cheer, although I'd like to. I never got the chance to settle down into Mellowfest and just let the day drift by. And while I've often walked alone in the dark, I've never experienced what my friends in Union Cabin experienced when we were together the other night. That connection that can instantly change challenge and fear into bonds of friendship and brotherhood. And it was really dark, you guys. So I can't go back, but I also know that there's something deeply important in recognizing what children know. I think it's important for all of us. The world is actually amazing. People are beautiful, people are challenging, and they cannot be explained. Bubbles and yo-yos are only the tip of the awe and the wonder and the magic. And it takes a child's eyes to see that. The world is also broken, it's vulnerable, it needs help everywhere. And children know that too, because they know how vulnerable and dependent they are. And we will never, ever survive as people or a planet if we can't figure out how to trust each other the way a child has to trust others, even when she's disappointed over and over again. You see, our dependence is bigger and greater and more valuable than our independence. And Jesus tried to explain that to the rich young man who had grown up too soon. So, guys, maybe what I want to say is just this simple, and I could have said it 15 minutes ago. Yes, I could have. Don't grow up. Not quite yet. Not quite this summer. Be a kid. D-heads, you guys most of all. If only because Jesus said so, or because I said so. And when you do one day find yourselves in the skin of an adult human, because we're all going to get there, just remember this particular summer and the child that you carry with you as you go. That child knows something true and real right now. And when your grown-up self seems lost, that child will save you and could save us all. Thank you.